Embrace's Flutter SDK is the ultimate tool for mobile developers. With its easy integration and comprehensive insights, you can get a complete picture of your app's performance and user behavior. You can monitor your app's startup time, network requests, and user sessions all in one place. But what really sets Embrace apart is their focus on actionable insights. Their SDK doesn't just tell you what's wrong with your app, it gives you recommendations for how to fix the issues. This means you can spend less time diagnosing problems and more time improving your app's performance. So if you're a mobile developer looking to take your app to the next level, head over to Embrace and check out their new Flutter SDK. You'll gain valuable insights into your app's performance and be able to make data-driven decisions to improve your app's user experience. Visit get.embrace.io/FHF/ to learn more about their Flutter SDK and sign up for their free trial today to elevate your app's performance to new heights. Hello and welcome to another episode of Flying High with Flutter. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. Today I'm with Marcin Wróblewski, who is a senior developer over at Monterail. Welcome, Marcin. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Hello, viewers, and thank you for having me.
You should say hello, colleagues, as we have so many of your colleagues, I think, watching the live stream.
Might be, yeah. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, of course, we have our favorite Matilda just said hello in the chat. Yeah, Matilda, I believe, was the one who reached out to me on Twitter to see if we can get somebody on to talk about how you guys are using Flutter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you are working on Flutter apps. Is that every day, or how's your involvement with Flutter exactly?
Yes, so we have a team that is dedicated to Flutter in Monterail. We are also doing other cross-platform development platforms, but I am specifically in Flutter and also in the open source community. So I'm involved in there. And
sorry, for the open source part, is Monterail actually contributing to open source, or is it just yourself in your free time?
Indirectly, because when I am on the bench, I am free to develop my projects. So the projects that I am maintaining, those are in the shape that they are right now, just because Monterail gave me time whenever it was necessary to polish the documentation, for example, or add features that was missing or not planned at the beginning. So indirectly, yeah. Of course, the template is also open source, but this is not like very big project. It's just a set of our opinions grouped into one template. But I guess we'll talk in length about this in the near future. So I won't start on this.
Before we get to the main topic, right? I mean, how long have you been developing for, and has all the time been in Flutter?
So I saw Flutter, I think, on the initial wave, on the big marketing campaign that they went for. So just before the first stable release, I got caught in one of their advertisements. I built a few applications just to test this out, just to check how actually similar Dart is to JavaScript, for example, and TypeScript, which I had experienced previously. So yeah, it was around that time. I'm not sure. It's 3 years now, something like this. 2 maybe, not sure. But it's from the stable release.
But what were you doing before you were working on Flutter?
I was doing native Android apps with Java, not with Kotlin. So actually, yeah, very, very old times. And just before Flutter, I switched to web. So to JavaScript and TypeScript on both and front end and back end side.
Now, the reason you got into Flutter exactly, was that because of some project work that happened over at Monterail, or what happened?
Actually, no. It was before I was working in Monterail. So we had to create an application. The first idea was to make this native, but because of the team size, it was problematic to maintain 2 separate applications, 2 separate code bases. So I started digging around and looking through options. And PWA was nice, but not fitting us enough. Ionic was also nice, but yeah, we had some requirements that crossed us out. And React Native I found problematic And so I guess I would be doing React Native because it was more established back then, and Flutter was at the stage that I was looking into this more like experimental. I know that what Google builds is, and something is stable, and that probably means that it's very stable and very well tested, but still it wasn't established on the market as is. It's just React Native initial guide failed to run on my device, and then I switched to Flutter and it worked. So just as the guide said. So that's why we picked Flutter because of then it was just targeting iOS and Android, but web, or maybe I know that web wasn't planned as the first extension, it was desktop, but then by community-driven effort, we switched to web. So we had this horizon that more and more platforms will be coming to Flutter. So yeah, that was the reasoning.
Now, when you first booted up, I mean, did you feel in awe about how well it worked? Because that's kind of usually my first thought process is, I mean, if you played around, you said you played around with React Native. React Native was such a mess for me. Like, it just couldn't get it to work. And when it did work, worked fine. And then when you go to upgrade one package, everything breaks. That was my experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's the approach. It's very different from Flutter and React Native. So Flutter, I mean, built by Google, so it inherits by default some behavior when it comes to developing frameworks. Google likes to provide a full package like it does for Flutter. So for example, linting is included, right? You have analyzer of the code included into Dart. You have testing framework that is included with the UI framework. So this is not the case for React Native. You have to mix and match your solutions, which is nice. I'm not saying that this is the bad approach, but the problem is that it's not as easy, for example, to switch projects because before you can even take on another project, you have to learn probably a new tool for debugging or for something like testing. For example, there are a few competing frameworks for this too in React Native from what I see, because I'm still looking there to see what competition is doing. Let's say competition. But yeah, that's the approach. I see benefits of both, but I just like that you can download Flutter. It will work most probably. If it installs it then works. Also, updates are not as troublesome. So yeah, that's the general vibe, that it just works. The minus might be that if the solution is not fitting you enough, so if you find something missing and Google is maintaining this, it might take a while before they ship this. Because for Flutter, it's quality over features, so they tend to be slow with new features. But still, at this point, I don't see anything missing. So
yeah, I was just thinking, is there really any features that you think we're missing? I feel like we have so much stuff already.
Just one, but this is also fixed by the community itself. So for the testing framework, there is integration test framework with Flutter. The problem is that it only has access to whatever happens in the application, right? Not on the native side. And there's Patrol, for example, that fixes this, and other testing frameworks that are fixing this issue. But Flutter doesn't come bundled with this solution. So for example, whenever you have to test something that includes, let's say, native system permission banner to, approve the location permission or approve the notification permission, you can't do this with plain Flutter. You have to work around something in there. But yeah, this is fixed already with community effort. So
What's the name of this community plugin? I've never heard of this.
It's Patrol. I know the developers behind this, so I might be a bit biased about this. I am using this in my project because of the permissions dialogues mainly. It can do much more. But yeah, this is a project is a part, or at least the developers that are developing this are joining Flutter Silesia meetings, so meetups that I also participate in. So that's how I got to know about this. But yeah, that's the problem that I encountered just after I learned about this solution, because it wasn't a problem for me at the beginning. But if your app matures enough, it's not it's problematic just to stay within Flutter whenever you will have some web view that you have to manage or whatever at some point. So that's a nice solution for this.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that because I kind of just accepted that sometimes you have these weird issues.
Yeah, I mean, that was my approach, but then I figured that this is doable with a bit of a community effort. So yeah, it's just, but as you can see, it's a very specific example, what's missing. Any general issues, I don't see any glaring issues that are now Flutter is struggling now with. So.
Well, I mean, there is some stuff too. We had a previous guest on that talked about if you're running a desktop app, that surprisingly there's no life cycle hooks.
Oh, so that's interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But obviously it's specific to them. But I thought that's a bit surprising because obviously we have those for iOS and Android, but we don't have those for desktop, which is kind of surprising because most people like to use a laptop. You know, if you close your laptop, open it back up, you may want to refresh the data on the page.
Yeah, exactly. So even it would be nice to know that the window is, for example, hidden, right? So we are not having to update data regularly. Yeah, interesting. So
yeah, that's also a really good one too. Yeah, if it's backgrounded, right, that could be interesting.
Yeah. This is what I am also using this for. So obvious issue, but yeah.
But I mean, you've been working with Android for some time, and you move over to Flutter. How was your thoughts? Were you like, this is easier? Were you like, this is too weird? Or what was the thought process?
So actually, I really liked the stateful refresh. So you can do the changes, and then you see this. It's so obvious now that whenever I go to develop something on the native side, it's just problematic to me that I have to rebuild the application. There is a way in Gradle to hot swap some things. So they are trying to do this, but I see that it fails after some of those refreshes. So it's just not convenient there, but they are trying to do the same. So the first issue is that I really like the language. So previously I was working in Java. So Java is very verbose in whatever you are trying to do. That was concise, but still JavaScript-like. So it was the combination that I liked. So you have types still. You have the generics and the type system benefits, but still it's very elastic when it comes to syntax, for example, like JavaScript is. It's not as elastic because you have the types that you have to accommodate for. I mean, you can do dynamic, but please don't if you don't have to. So
I was going to say, you could use the magical DYN to get through some of these issues.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the main appeal. Other than, of course, having one code base to develop stuff. The other thing is that the tooling on the native side is much older, so it's problematic for them to establish, to copy even what we have in Flutter right now because of the architecture that is, you can't change this easily without breaking applications that are already live.
Yeah, I think there's, I believe the way some of the implementation part works, right? So, like the implements in Java, I don't think we have something like that. You just have to extend, right? I don't think there's any way to ever implement something.
Yeah. And also you have mixins. So there's now direct implementations, but this might be a good thing.
Have you taken a look at Dart 3 yet?
Yes, a bit. When the big event was happening, I was following. The amount of content was overwhelming, but after a few weeks, I caught up with this. So pattern matching is something that is definitely very welcome. I just saw the proposal and I already see how much lines I would save in my projects when this would be already available. So
curious about what you think about pattern matching, because that's a very functional type of thing. It's not really Java. Although Java is trying to be more functional, which is interesting.
Yeah, the functional programming is like new OOP. I wouldn't replace this because it's tricky to do just plain functional programming, but the principles are very nice and it's easier to not make mistakes like with OOB. So yeah, that's I don't have anything against functional programming. It might be kind of tricky for beginners to comprehend what's happening, but this is the case for any technology or for any language that is mature enough that is starting to sugar code the syntax that was repeatedly inputted. Yeah.
Well, I'm the reason we're going to your background is because I want to start to kind of set the tone about who you are, right? So you mentioned that you also have some OSS work, some open source work you're working on. Particularly, you have a bunch of packages on pub.dev, right? So do you mind to kind of go through those and talk about what they are and what they could be useful for?
Yeah, sure. Mhm. So the most popular one is floating. I think it's only for Android, and it enables picture-in-picture mode for Android. So you can shrink your application and then it floats. So and the usage is as for the most common usage is, for example, for YouTube or for any video app. That whenever you leave the application and the video is still playing, you are just shrinking the application, so the video is still playing, or you can listen to music or whatever. Without dealing with the background killing of the system. But also Google Maps are doing something like this too. So whenever you are in the navigation and you want to check something, it shrinks. So that's the idea. It's sadly not possible for iOS. iOS have something similar for video, but this works only for specific widgets, native widgets, or views, like they call them. So it's not possible in this form for iOS. So yeah, but still, it's very, very popular for me, at least at my level. It's around 100 likes, which I gather is a big number, and also a few community-driven tutorials pop up on YouTube. So I guess it was something that they found interesting. So yeah, that's the most interesting one. There's something, because we are working with block, for example, also in the template, we picked blocked. So there's something that helps with that, with throttling and doing some stuff, because in block you can use streams. I mean, it uses streams internally, and you can benefit from this. So for example, whenever you don't want to update the data or the views or whatever, you don't want to do this at each trigger, you can do reactive extensions on your streams, and this package is doing this very easy. So you are just providing how often you want the data to be refreshed, and yeah, basically this is also very small. When you go to the it's like, I don't know, less than 100 lines of code, and mainly it's those lines are comments, because I am using a ring start there, and it's just a also shortening of whatever you can do already with ring start directly. Is just, I think, a bit nicer to work with, a bit clearer to comprehend. And there's also the adopted package and for image cropping. So the original author did a great job of doing this base, but then not like abandoned, because when something is breaking with new Flutter versions, they fix this. But also they don't do new features or updates, like convenient updates. So I adopted the package and did some updates myself, basically. And there are a few more, I think, but I don't remember, to be honest. One is like an experiment with SarilDB. So it's a port of whatever was available for JavaScript. It was the humbling experience for me, because since Dart and JavaScript are very similar, I thought it would be easy. But the way that it's written in JavaScript was, completely crazy. So I had to rewrite more than I expected for this. But still, a few users also tried to work with this in Flutter. I just want to state for clarity that this is experimental, and I didn't make an update since I wrote this. I hope it works still, because not many updates was done to the backend, from what I see. But yeah, we'll see if the official package is coming too, because they have plans for this, but it's not yet available.
I'm really interested in this floating one, right? Because that reminds me of, I know a long time ago you had like these floating bubbles for Facebook Messenger, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could probably use it to do something similar, or no?
Actually, no. Android has something else for this, but this is problematic because you are not in control of this. Android is trying to do this automatically whenever you have a specific notification type, so you can communicate with this. But there are creative ways of viewing picture-in-picture, since this is a full application that you can run. There's no limitations of what you can do. The only limitation is that it's small. So there are games, for example. I saw it wasn't using floating, I believe, but I saw, for example, a game that you are, like Tamagotchi or whatever, you are taking care of your virtual pet, and you can bring the pet with you with this picture-in-picture, right? So it's just, the possibilities are endless with this one. So I'm just waiting for more and more of those.
Well, I mean, it would be cool if you can somehow make this work on iOS, but I think it's probably more restrictive on what you can run. That's why this package is not available there, right?
Yes, for iOS, it's only video and only the specific UI view that you have to have. So that's the problematic part. I mean, I thought about what you can do, because potentially you could, somehow render the video of whatever is happening in the application and then pretend that this is the video that you want to play in picture-in-picture. But I don't think it will work this way. So that's the problematic part. Yeah, and also there's no guarantee that it will actually work as expected.
And people actually want that, etc., right? Yeah. Because I use that feature all the time on my iPad, but it's just for videos, right? And I'm happy with that.
I already had some requests about this, so I tried to politely decline not stating that this is impossible, because then someone will come and and prove that it is possible actually. But yeah, I also find annoying sometimes that the package is not available, at least for iOS and Android, because this is the base that I find useful. But still, for native APK, it's nice that I could take on this, right? So we already have so many plugins for the native stuff that are working for many platforms. So they are providing the common API for common things that we can, as open source community, just dig into this specific Android API, and I can provide you package for this specific thing that is not available for iOS, at least not in this form, right? There are many more, like for example, you can also, a new thing with Chrome is that you can not only open a tab in Chrome, but the new thing is that you can open a bottom sheet with your application, and there's also a special API for this. And I saw that also there are projects that are doing this, right? So very niche approach, a very niche example that is available only for Android. And it's also developed because so many plugins are there already that you can dig into those specifics and reach the environment.
Yeah, these platform-specific things are really annoying after some time.
Yeah. So yeah, you have, if I am on Android, then do stuff. And without comments often. So that's on the developers to explain why we are not doing this for specific platform. It would be nice, but still.
And some kind of workaround, or some kind of way to still have some kind of experience for people who don't have Android, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys have had to deal with a lot of these multi-platform kind of applications, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because I see that there's you guys released a guide called Guide to Cross-Platform Development.
Yes.
Now, what exactly is in this book?
Because we are talking about Flutter because we are on flying high with Flutter, but we are having many teams, and also we are doing React Native and Ionic. So the guide tries to explain what's best for which application, for which platform, and kind of guide you through the world of what even cross-platform is, what does it mean, what are shortcomings of the available technologies, so we can pick the best one for your project. Basically this. So a set of helpful information that we gathered throughout our experience.
So what is some basic information we can take from the book? Do you have any examples?
What I specified already. So I don't want to spoil this for you. So I don't want to go through the book. Basically a set of maybe guides that you can take. What technology is the best for you? We still recommend reaching out to us to get the most of this, because we are doing stuff like workshops, for example, that can help you with when you have an idea for an application. You can even see a need in the market, but we can still, with our business analysis, help you pick the best technology. So that's one point, because you might have heard about one, but we can actually help you to understand if you need this specific technology. There are better ones fitted for your needs. And also how to make whatever you want the easiest, and how to target your audience with this. So the book is thorough on this. We also have a big blog about stuff like this with links to other resources. So our blog and the book is a great resource to learn about cross-platform, but also more.
Okay, yeah, I'll be sure to leave a link to the book in the show notes. People can check it out. Also, it's kind of interesting that there's a story about an internal desk booking application that you guys worked on. Do you mind to give some history about that?
Yeah. So actually, because of this app, because of the initial implementation of this, I got a job at Monterail, because it was the internal evaluation of the technology. So they started with, they had the team of React Native developers prior to this, and those, they saw, so the higher ups saw that Flutter is a big thing. It's not anymore something like, a new competitor that is just doing first steps in the market of cross-platform, but it was getting bigger. But still, they wanted to check if this is actually doable, to build a full application, full functional application with this. So a bunch of interested developers from other technologies went through and built a first ODRA application. So this is Office Desk Reservation app, which is also the acronym is Odra, which is a river in Wrocław when the HQ is placed. So a pun, basically, a very elaborate one. So it was the first project with Flutter, and then we used the code or the idea, because this wasn't released actually, the first implementation. Then when the Flutter team was, the initial Flutter team was employed, we used this opportunity to rewrite because the idea was clear and we knew what we want to build, but we had to pick our tools, right? And as a team building exercise, let's say, to pick whatever fits our experience and our preferences best. So we started writing the new implementation of Odra with the same feature set. So basically that's the story. It's for booking desks, so nothing special, but also we wanted to make this make the most out of Flutter, and Flutter is known for the animations, right? For being buttery smooth. So we plugged in lots of those interesting animations, but also explicit ones whenever necessary. And the funny thing about this was that we initially we targeted Android and iOS, so our target platforms. Web was around, but we didn't plan on releasing this to the web because of, it's very different platform to use, and also it's easier to exploit, for example, because you have access to all of the developer tools that are at your fingertips. It's not, you can do also stuff like this in mobile applications, but you have to be more creative, more experienced. And since this was the internal project, we didn't really want to make this, for example, publicly available and to mess around with. But actually, the problem was that iOS or App Store didn't want us into the store with this, because it was a hyper-local solution for employees of specific company, which wasn't actually true, because it was also for contractors or whoever will be joining us. So there are apps that are doing this too. But in the end, we didn't agree on being let into the store. So then we pivot to the web, right? So it was actually unexpected that we did this for the web after all. But once we did, it turned out to be the most popular platform for the application. So it's just by accident we figured that actually Flutter is very viable for web platform as the web framework. It's just, there are some weird things with the web support for Flutter, so that was kind of problematic. And also, as user of the website, you can go to whatever link you wish without developer explicit agree, which is not the case if you don't enable deep linking for the native platforms. So we had to do some adjustments, but still, by accident, we figured that actually the web support, even though clunky, because the canvas is kind of clunky still, is very viable whenever you have something to deliver. If you have an interactive application that you want to deliver, because if this is full of content, that's probably not the best approach. You shouldn't have your content rendered on a canvas, because then SEO doesn't work at all. But for the application that is very animated, or you don't have to have SEO because you are linking from other services, it should be fine. And also it's working very nice.
Yeah, that's interesting how it wasn't. Web was kind of an afterthought, and then it came out being that's the only way to be able to actually use the app, right? And now, like, you're still working on the app, or it's kind of just.
We released this because we then was on the initial bench, let's say. We were looking for projects. We had some, but in the meantime, we were building this. And now it's feature complete, so whatever we wanted to be there, so what was necessary is there. Whenever we have time, we are jumping in to do some adjustments that were reported by the employees, let's say, by the users. And there are plenty, because, everybody is using the users are very technical, as you may understand. So they are seeing little things that we can adjust. So we are doing some updates, but not big ones. So,
You're only doing updates for the web, right? You're not touching iOS, Android anymore, right?
We are also updating Android too, because for Android we still have some users. So we because we were let into Google Play, so we are also doing this. There are so the native is still living. It's just not for iOS because they didn't want us there. So not only web, but still web user.
After building all these different apps in Flutter, right? Then I suppose this is where Monterail. I don't know why I always get this, bro. Monterail. So I get confused which one's which, right? Because the names are so similar. So Monteway is the type of template, right? Or that's the name of the company now.
Monterail is the name of company, and Monteway is it's not only our template for Flutter, but also many more templates for other technologies too.
Okay, so Monterail made Monteway for their apps, right?
Yes, exactly. So just to have this common starting point to start projects, because we are starting projects often. So to have to not figure out each time which state management we would like to use, we battle tested whatever we decided on with Odra, and then created a template based off of this. So based off our experience with this one.
Now, do you mind to kind of talk about like the start of this? What was the history? Like, why and when did you guys start to look at having some kind of templated setup?
Yeah. So because one thing, because we as developers we tend to do or at least put a lot of effort to pick our tools, and then we are very attached to this. So there are always, whenever the team gets bigger, there's always some discrepancies between the tools that we are using, even when Flutter is delivering most of them. So we don't have to pick them. It's still necessary to pick some of them. So that's why we decided to create a template of what we see as a basic minimum to make the application work correctly. And yeah, we explained this also in the, for further arguments, for future arguments, we explained our choices in the documentation, in the README. So it's a lengthy README, but it's very valuable to read through those. So to see our reasoning why we picked what we picked, for example. Yeah, like the block one. The block one is very block state management is kind of controversial because it's very bureaucratic in whatever you want to do there, right? There's a bit of boilerplate. We also have our own VS Code extension for this specific reason, because we have some snippets there that we can install. So as you can see, because if there's I need to create a snippet tool, that probably means there's a lot of boilerplate that you have to write. But the benefits of this block approach are so nice, are so severe that we wanted to have a block, for example, and we are explaining in the documentation why we picked this one.
I'm curious about which state management solutions did you actually take a look at? Obviously, Block was one. I suppose Riverpod must be another, right?
Actually, it was Provider. Riverpod was somewhere because it was already a thing, because the template itself is quite old. I mean, it's a year old at least. So the market there, because Flutter is growing fast and the community is growing fast, it was very different back then. So Provider was used, for example, for the first implementation of Odra. I also had some experience with Redux because I was switching from React. So I tried to use Redux implementation in Flutter, but it doesn't work as nice without JS benefits. So whenever you have types, the Redux is not as easy to use as you would like. And also I had some custom solution kind of with behavior subjects. So with the functional approach. So a few were tested by me. And we also, other team members were used to Block. So maybe I was the last one to use Block, actually. I was interested in Block, but because the bureaucracy and the overall documentation that was there, it was overwhelming at the beginning for the beginner. So that's why I skipped through Block, but then it turned out to be nice. And also the extensions for Block in the community are also great. For example, testing framework is there, and this is the greatest benefit that I think a Block have is that how easy it is to test blocks in isolation. So we are just putting the list of inputs, and then you are expecting a list of states in the end, and this is your test, right? You don't have to bother with remembering which actual function has to be called and in which order. You are just sending events to the box, and then the box returns states. So that's the nice thing that we wanted to achieve, the testability of the application.
Yeah, I think that is very true. I love using Block. I know some people on my team, they start using Riverpod, and I'm open to it, but because like everybody keeps saying so many good things about it, and also one of my developers, he's really crazy about Riverpod. I said, okay, fine, give it a try on this app, see how it goes. I asked the other developer, how's he feel? He's like, it's okay. So I don't know. It just seems like Riverpod is the most popular one for right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's better than Provider. So that was the overall goal of Riverpod, to be better than Provider, because Provider is very appealing to the beginners because it looks easy. The problem is when you have a bigger application and you want to do something that is not, that is more complicated than just simply plugging in your provider into the tree and then using this. If your app is too big, you just can't do this because it's not maintainable. And this is what Riverpod fixes. But yeah, also Riverpod is having some code generation built in already. So that also a sign that a bit more code has to be written. It's just the same code, so we can automate this, which is the same for Block, for example. There are also plenty of code generators for this. So you are safe at compile time, for example, with some issues that you might have with Provider. So that's my approach. I'm not recommending Provider, but I see the appeal and of the Riverpod too. And also even block itself has the qubit approach, which is basically the same solution then. So I see that you might think that block is too bureaucratic, too verbose, but it's also for me, it's the very minimum that you have to make a scalable application. If you're building something nice, something small that you know will be small, so a hobby project or just a proof of concept, it's okay to use the simpler ones like Liverprod. But yeah, in the end, I think block is the best one available for now with the support, not only just the implementation wise, but also the support from community and from the maintainer too.
So you touched on state management. I know there's translation part in there too. What other kind of pieces are there that are chosen?
For example, local cache, local storage. So we are using Hive for this. We didn't employ full database because this was also a trade-off between what we want to include into the template, but also the template is a template, right? So we don't want to overload it with solutions for applications that might not use all of the features. But I think sooner or later, every application will have to cache something, for example, on the disk. And so that's why Hive is there too. So you don't have to bother with serialization of the data that you are storing on the disk yourself. You can do this via Hive. There's also, basically the caching one. We also picked Dio there, I think. At least we are ready with Dio. So the one reason for using Hive there was that it already have caching layer ready for Dio. So we don't have to, make this, for example, bridge ourselves. We can use just one plugin for Dio to store the information with Hive automatically whenever we wish so.
So just those three pieces. So you have state management. Are you going to look it up?
Other thing other thing is that we also tested this with our own projects. So it's not only that we are using this in our company projects, but also in private ones. I started 2 projects from this too. So I know that it works and I'm just used to this and it's ergonomic to use. I know that other developers did so too. So basically this. We also have some opinions on routing. So this is also this is another thing that is provided by Flutter, but it doesn't have that much strength. I think it doesn't cover everything that we would like. Sometimes, like a more nested navigators. I mean, with Navigator 2.0, it changed. It got more verbose because the first Navigator was very lacking in features and it was very basic, but the second one is better. But since there's plenty of boilerplate with routing too, we opted for autoroute. So it automatically generates the router for you. You just have to declaratively specify what you want your route to be and which route is which widget, and then you can do the code generation, and it automatically links the things together. So we have this too. Linting informatics. So this is also controversial. Which rules you are using? With Flutter 3, I think it arrived. It got more strict. So by default, Flutter lints got more strict about some features. But we picked this one as is without adding anything new to not become, to stay elastic with the new features, for example. So we don't have to update our linter whenever something new comes in to Dart. So we picked the default linter, but still we have to configure this too. So we did this. You mentioned internalization, but this is actually just fetched from the skeleton project that you can also spawn whenever you want with Flutter basic template. And the big thing that is often omitted or problematic in the future, when you start your application, you are doing this probably in staging or development mode, right? So whenever you have services that are connecting to something, you will have this connected to your testing environment, staging environment. But when it comes to production, you have to switch those, right? So there are plenty of approaches how to do this. The old one is to use flavors. But the problem with flavors is that those doesn't work well with web. I'm not sure about the platforms for desktop because we are not supporting this. This is possible to support, but we didn't include this in the initial template. So we are using Dart define for this with some additions to make those variables that we are specifying with Flutter command to make those available also for the native side. So whenever you have a key that you have to swap based on your environment that we are building for, or I don't know, if you would like to switch a API endpoint based off of this, you can do so with Dart define, and we have examples how to do this. We have some basic setup for App Center, which is actually interesting because App Center doesn't support Flutter out of the box, but they do support native builds for iOS and Android. So we are configuring the native builds with step that downloads Flutter as the prerequisite for building the application, and we are building with this. So we are using App Center. And yeah, you can look up how to do this because there are plenty of articles how to do this, but those are outdated as we found. And so some adjustments were made, and you can look up how we do things there. And when it comes to CI, we're also having some workflows that are predefined for you to lint, for example, automatically with whenever you are creating a new PR, you can do so. With automatic tests, right? So we are not allowed to merge without testing pass, for example, or basic linting pass. Also, another opinion that we have is Sentry. So there are plenty of services that are doing what Sentry does, so gathering the error messages and error reports. And we are using Sentry, so this is already included into template 2. And other, let's say, housekeeping stuff like ADR. So this is our decision log, why we picked this or why we switched away from something. So we are not making the same mistakes in the future. Because the project starts, you picked one solution, then it turned out to be not okay. You are switching to something, but after a few months, you may, or the team may even change completely. And they will figure, okay, so let's switch to something else. And they will go back to the solution that was problematic, but they didn't knew why. To avoid those switching, we have ADR. So even for the template, we have some decisions that were described there, why we switched from one to another. Changelog. So this is just a file, but it's nice to have already in the repository, so we can easily update our users with whatever changed. And there are automatically generated release notes, but this is always those contain information that you might not want to include with your private project. So the changelog is there to inform other users and other developers on the progress, right, and the dates whenever something was introduced to the project in the high level. Setup for VS Code, but this is what I mentioned already. So we have a plugin and also some steps how to set up the environment to work with this specific template. Yeah. I think I mentioned everything. There's something about testing, but this is mainly because integration framework is not, it's included in the SDK, but it's not by default included into the application. You have to do this step manually. And since we are adding those tests anyway, we figured why not just make this into the template already as a dependency.
You did kind of touch a little bit on this. I think I heard where like if you decide to swap out one of these components, let's say that block is dead for some reason, hopefully not someday, but if you decide to use say River Pod or there's some other new thing that you decide is much better for your style, what would be the process if somebody wanted to upgrade their app to kind of still follow the Monteway?
So the template, it's not just the template. There are examples of usage that we are expecting you to follow, right? Because one thing is having the technology, and then the second thing is how to use the technology. So we have the example up in there that stores some data, for example, and uses state management, of course. And if we would have to switch the plugin for state management, let's say, the steps that will be necessary for migration will be stated in the commit history, because we will have to go through this process, and this would be like a migration guide for whoever started with our template and then find themselves with the situation that they have to switch because the project is not longer maintained. So that would be our approach. There's sadly no magic solution for this. I mean, it would be maybe easier for example, Hive to replace Hive because it's just storing data, and it might be easier to replace this. But when it comes to something like state management, it's just too big of a part of the architecture to easily swap out. So we will provide a guide because we will have to figure out how to change this, but still, you will have to do this on your own to follow the steps that we did in the template.
Now, have you thought about distributing the app using a brick instead, rather than using this kind of style of kind of cloning the project?
Yes, but also very early we decided not to. It would be after some time, it looks like it would be nice to have. So we have this steps whenever you are cloning the template to make the template actually fit your project. You will have to replace some stuff like bundle ID, app name, for example. And so we have those steps stated there. And with Brick, it would be more automatic, so you don't have to make the changes manually, but it would be possible to make them when you are using the Brick. But we decided not to tie ourselves with another tool that we were not very much accustomed to. So that's why it's just a simple template. And also another reason was that it's not every day that we are creating those projects. So the steps that you have to take, that those are currently manual, are, you can automate them, but the effort required to automate them might be too big to make this valuable, right? So we considered this, but yeah, we haven't opted for this. Maybe in the future, because it looks like Mason is here to stay. So it's more established that it was when we built this. The decision would be different now, maybe.
I mean, it seems like a pretty good template to begin with. I mean, is there any plans to add more features or to change something out? Like, what's going on right now with it?
Right now, we are supporting this. So whenever an update comes out, we are trying to keep the template up to date. And the latest change that was breaking, kind of, or at least deprecating some stuff that we were using for blog, was already applied in this manner. So we are now supporting this, right? We are not trying to make this a default template for everyone in the Flutter community, because this is very opinionated and it fits our needs. It might fit yours if you are familiar with blog, for example, and you have this robust application that you will be building and you see benefits of those solutions that we picked. So the plan is to maintain this as is, not add new features, because there are already plenty, I think, to not make this too big of a template. So whenever you clone the project, you will have to get rid of something from the list from the list of features that we input into there.
That's a good point you just brought up to my mind. Is like, is there people who are outside of the company who are actually using it or contributing back?
We haven't got contributions back, and I don't know actually if anybody else. I know that we internally, for projects not directly for the company, we used this. So for our personal projects, the developers within company used this, and we had some feedback about this from the internal sources. What to change, what to fix, what doesn't work, for example, after Flutter updated. from the outside world, not yet, but we are waiting for this. I also described our and created an example application on our blog. So there's also the full reasoning of why we picked something and why we picked the feature set that we have right now in the application, in the template, and not more or less. So it's specified there too. So maybe we get some traction, because it would be nice to battle test this even further, even though we have a few projects that are running well with this and scale well. It would be nice to have a outside confirmation that it also works for others. But for now, we are also very happy that it works for you, for us.
Now, is it a rule that you have to use this if you're working at Monterail?
No, it's not a rule. So whenever you see, like I specified, let's say you have a proof of concept to build, it might be that you don't want this, right? You don't want to drag all of those features with you. If you are creating if you are testing, I don't know, SerilDB, let's say, it would be problematic even to take all of this that we have right now and try to test something out of this just quickly. So it's not a rule. It's just whenever we are trying to do this with this template, but when we see it's too much or we want to use every features, it's completely fine to start another with another set of features.
Yeah. Okay. This is looking pretty cool. I mean, I like the idea. We do try to keep a list internally about like which plugins we tend to use, and it'd be good to actually have a kind of template that we could use, whether it's a brick or Git clone or something else. I don't know. I'm thinking would be fun and kind of good for us to have, because the big issue is like, you know, switching projects, right? So if you have a couple developers working on a project and then some of them need to go to another project and then come back, if they have the same plugins, it's easy to kind of keep up with what's going on rather than change the mindset or change the thinking process about how this stuff works and what's the best process. And yeah.
You just have to worry about the business layer and not of the technology. You can simply, if you figure out what you want to, what the client wants to do, you can apply this, not figure out how to actually make this not break everything else that was built already.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. So that's why I wanted to have you guys on. I thought it's pretty cool that you guys have this template, and you. The good thing is that you actually come up with a reason about why you chose what you chose, because sometimes people just choose it and then that's it. So it's good to have a detailed reason about why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's also kind of one of the approaches. So just to pick stuff that maybe even it's not your opinion, but maybe the opinion of the community. So just look by numbers of likes or blog posts or whatever, views on YouTube on specific tutorials. So you just have this solution picked for you, because often the solutions are very similar. The changes are in the implementation, but the idea is generally the same. So yeah, it's definitely nice to have this pre-picked for you whenever you are starting a scalable project and you have to have something that is battle tested, so you are not testing on your client if this actually works in the future or not. So the established templates are something that can help you with this.
Perfect. Yeah, I like this. I mean, is there anything else that we should know about the Monteway, or anything else we should know about Monterail before we sign off, because we're just about out of time?
Yeah, just maybe quickly about Monterail. So it's not only that, because we focused on the technology here, but we are doing everything else. So if you have an idea for the app, we can help you with the market analysis. We are doing designs. So not only implementation, but also the part even before you are starting the designs. So the workshops part is this part. So we are getting the client. We are discussing what the client wants to build, and we are trying to guide the client and understand what the client needs, and also the client kind of can understand what are the shortcomings or the benefits of picking specific solution for this given problem that they want to solve. So yeah, just to reiterate of what Monterail is doing, not to close ourselves with Flutter or even close platform, because we are a big company and we are trying to broaden the feature set that we are providing to our customers.
That's good to know. And yeah, it's some companies they focus totally on a technology like Flutter. There's quite a few out there,
Mhm.
and but you guys really balance out. I mean, how many people do you have actually working just on Flutter? Do you know?
Right now, it's a small team, very small. So it's 3 people. We had more, but through some rearrangements, we have less. It's much bigger team for React Native, for example, which we also tightly work with. It's 20 people there. So yeah, we also have other technologies, both backend and frontend. So web developers with Vue, React, and Angular. Angular, I think it's the least popular one. And on backend, we have, for example, the Ruby on Rails is something that is like our core technology, because Monterail started as a company that provided Ruby on Rails developers or development power, and we are still very big on in this team. So yeah, it's around 200 people, and Flutter is just a small subset of this.
Okay, and with that, I want to thank you guys for coming on, and I'm happy that you guys are working on some open source stuff, but you're also contributing back to the community and offering these kinds of guides about multi-platform and um, a template that you guys use. So that's good to kind of give some feedback out there, and it's also great that you guys are focusing also on the idea phase because that's one of the hardest parts, right?
Yeah,
Having your idea and actually hammering out and having a real idea.
and yeah.
You basically have thoughts. Most people have thoughts when they come to you, right? But they need to have an actual idea, more thought out, right?
Exactly. Yes. So this is what we want to do. Help you build the application you want and pick the technologies, because this is what we are experienced with.
Okay. And with that, again, thank you for coming on, and maybe we'll have you again on in the future.
Thank you.